Hi guys, sorry. You hear me?
Yep, I hear you.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. My internet went out for a second. It was good all day until now. All right, yeah, right, of course you need to deal with the simple threat, right? Of knight takes d7. Um, what's the best way of doing that? For your own benefit. Does anyone have any ideas?
Well, you got to save your queen.
Right, probably. Right. Like, yeah, I mean, the only other option, right, would be bishop takes e5, but then bishop takes e5 check, and that's super, super strong for white. Right, so actually, what I kind of like about this puzzle, actually, is the only thing that's, actually somewhat challenging about it is, most tactics, right, or many of them are very flashy, right? You're like looking for something that's, you know, impressive and complicated. But I think, yeah, actually, the simple winning move here is just queen e6, right? Because in this position, it's actually a double attack, right? You're threatening the bishop, and you're threatening on e5. So yeah, okay, you won, and knight takes f4 is just winning. Right? You're protecting the knight, and so it's actually rather, somewhat simple. But sometimes you just don't want to, over big things, do too much. And that's actually, by the way, why I like all the puzzles on LeakChess.org, because they all come from real games. This was from some random rapid game, between two decent players, and they're all very practical. So let's warm up with one more quick puzzle, and then I want to actually go into a game that Patrick had actually sent me. So, right, and one thing you always want to think about when we're doing these puzzles is realizing that 90% of puzzles and tactics happen because of positional reasons, right? So before you even attempt to solve this, right, this is black to play and win. What do you notice about the position positionally? What are some positional factors in this position?
White rook is a bit weak and unprotected, subject to a knight discovery move.
Okay, so discover, but you're actually thinking tactically, right? You're looking at position, right? You're looking at tactically. Well, we'll get there, right? But forget about discoveries, pin, fork, all that good stuff. But what do you think about this position positionally?
White's king is a bit weak with the queen ready to step in.
Yeah, right. White's king is a little bit weak, right? It's a little bit exposed, right? Black's king is very safe.
And the king side
Exactly,
can help the attack.
exactly. Right. White's king is okay. So I'm looking at potential attacking. What's something about this position that's better for white? I would say there's two things about this position that are better for white.
Pass pawn.
What pawn you said?
The pass pawn.
Well, there's no passed pawns actually. A passed pawn is a pawn that actually has no pawns, either directly in front of it or on either side. So you're referring to the a pawn, maybe?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So not exactly a passed pawn, right? Because the pawn is on b7.
Got it.
I mean, it definitely has a potential though. In fact, longer term, right? One thing white does have is a queen side pawn majority, right? So long term, yeah, you definitely have a potential. In fact, I was just teaching a private lesson to a kid, and one thing we were, actually talking about was how you have to reverse engineer. You go to the end. Well, how are you going to win this end game? Oh, you're going to make a queen. Well, if you're going to make a queen, what are you going to do? Oh, you're going to create a passed pawn, right? And then if you're going to create a passed pawn, what do you have to do? Oh, you have to do a breakthrough. Right? So it is, definitely something that is worthwhile to note. Okay, so the two things that I was actually, trying to get at was one, I would say white does, at least right now, have the initiative. Right? White has a threat. And the other thing is, okay, maybe these bonds are double, not so good long term. So, because of these double pawns, and actually that pawn majority, it is true that I think black has to do something, a little bit quickly here. Okay, so what are some ideas for black here?
Knight f4 attacks the h pawn and the rook.
Sorry?
Uh, Knight f4.
Okay, so knight f4, what's going to happen after rook takes d7?
I take the pawn with check, and then take the rook back. Take the rook back.
No, but then bishop takes h3.
Bishop
Right, knight,
is the-
knight f4, rook takes d7, knight takes h3, check, bishop takes h3. Right?
Yeah, I'll take that back.
So, yeah, right. So as you said before, right, you alluded to potential discoveries. You definitely do, right? So yeah, I mean that. So knight f4, yeah, rook takes d7, queen takes d7. I don't know if it fully helps you. What's another discovery to look at? Right, because knight f4 threatens the rook, right? Rook takes d1, but what's something that also threatens something else?
I mean, b5. It's a discovery.
Oh, well, b5, yeah, right, also a discovery. But then actually, white's going to be winning, right? Queen takes c7, rook takes
Yeah,
c7, and rook takes d3.
That's not gonna work.
Right? Probably not. So, um, right, but where could you go with the knight? Right, and also you have to remember, tactically what I was telling, Patrick in particular, but everyone else before, right? You also have to go, back to basics, right? Right now, if white had another move, okay, rook takes d3, right? Winning a piece, right? So whatever move you do needs to stop that. Yeah.
What about knight c5?
Knight c5. Well, if knight c5, okay, like rook takes d7, right? Probably have to play knight takes d7 after that. It's about equal. Unless I'm missing something. Right, but where? Yeah, okay. So you have another threat on the pawn. Right, but where else could you have a bigger threat? Where else could the knight go to have a bigger threat? And think about pieces that are unprotected for white as well. Are there any pieces of whites that are unprotected that that black knight could actually attack as well?
The knight is unprotected.
Okay, so how could you attack that knight?
knight e5.
There you go. Right? So after knight e5, I think you just basically win. Oh, wait, actually, wait. What am I? Sorry, guys, I'm wrong. Knight e5. I'm guilty here. Knight e5. What's actually wrong with that? I honestly don't know. Oh, you know what? Knight e5, bishop e2. Protecting everything. Right? Knight e5, bishop e2 is protecting everything. So, yeah, I guess that's the issue. So, right? So we need to think of something better here, actually. uh, okay, so I mean, like another move I'm thinking about is, like queen f4, but then okay, rook takes d3 and everything. Well, queen f4, right? Rook takes d3, rook takes d3, bishop takes d3, queen takes f3, then queen b8 checkmate is a problem. Yeah, I need help, guys. Oh, okay, now I see it. I found it. I think. Ooh, this is tricky. I honestly thought I had the answer, but this one is actually, rather tricky.
Queen f4.
Right, so queen f4, right, I don't think it's going to work, right, because, right, if queen f4, then rook takes, bishop takes, queen takes, and queen e3, and, not so simple. Right, so the idea was, and yeah, this was a really tricky one. I could literally finally see it, to be honest, Knight takes f2, which is actually just strong. And if rook takes d2, I mean, rook takes d7, queen g3 check. Very strong. But honestly, I didn't even see that in the beginning. All right, so let's go into a game that Patrick sent to me the other day. You were black in this game, right? Yeah, black in this game. Yeah. First, by the way, I just thought I'd quickly mention I actually have my. He actually just hopped off. My friend Mike Papapoulou was here. He's actually a guitar teacher. He was a guest on my podcast previously. But anyway, so yeah, it's that. Okay, so e4, c5, d4 takes. So he played the Moor Gambit, which is a very tricky thing to do against the Sicilian. By the way, just as a reminder, everyone, if you do have any games that you play throughout the week, certainly feel free to send them, and I'd be more than happy to go over them as the week goes by. So yeah, so back here, he played queen takes d4, which is basically just not so great. But I think it's definitely worth noting what to do against the Moor. Because that is definitely something, especially nowadays, you'll see over and over and over again if you're a Sicilian player. So Patrick, what would you play here if you played c3, the Moor?
The idea is that you then take the second pawn, or they want you to take the second pawn, and then they take with the knight, I think.
Yep.
And now they have a pretty good lead in development, control the center, but
Yep.
at the cost of a pawn.
So I'm gonna offer two suggestions, and you could pick, of course, whichever one you think is, more up your alley. So the first one, since I already accepted the gambit, will be to accept. And this is one, definitely not the only, but one way that I've learned to sort of defend against the Mora. One is play e6. And white, of course, like any other gambit, right, is sacrifice the pawn with the intent that his development advantage will be enough, for the pawn. So white will continue to develop his pieces, and then black has this interesting idea after developing his knight to c6. White usually plays bishop c4 here to maneuver this knight to g6. So knight e7, castles, knight g6, queen e2, and bishop e7 and castles.
Leave him alone.
One, and castles. Black actually is not winning here. White actually does have basically almost enough compensation for the pawn, but not more than enough. Any thoughts, questions, ideas?
What's the idea with the knight on g6? What,
So,
he's
a couple
been trying
things.
to get it there.
One, if you play knight f6, it always runs into e5. So that's number one. Number two, the idea is you're playing on the dark squares. So the idea, right back to this position that we were at before, right? You might play sort of like a Taimanov, bishop e3, queen c7, try to play for knight f4. Right, by the way, the Taimanov is the Sicilian. d6, d4, takes, ace, queen c, knight c6, knight c3, and queen c7. It's a similar idea. Right, so it is very important to always be able to identify relationships from one opening to another and being able to figure out, how you could take an idea from one opening and, bring it to another. So, okay, very good. So that's one thing to do against the Mora. And the other thing, which is a little bit simpler actually, is just basically by force going to a c3 Sicilian by playing knight f6. And now, pretty much his only idea is to advance, and then knight d5. White usually plays knight f3, and yeah, d6 takes. And this is just a normal c3 Sicilian, which is not considered so strong. Right. So whichever which moving forward, which do you think would be more up your alley?
Probably just taking.
Yeah, either way. I mean, it's
Kind of simple.
it's a matter of style.
Yeah.
Okay, but of course, yeah, he played queen takes d4, which actually is just not good. Okay, so knight c6, right? Your opponent developed his queen. Attack it with tempo. D6. Why d6 over knight f6?
I guess I don't see the Smith-Morter gambit that much, so I was just saying to myself, let me just go back to playing what I would normally play here.
Right, so fair enough. Right, but honestly though, I tell students all the time to do exactly the opposite of what you just said to me. Right? You've never seen this before. Well, guess what? Your opponent is not pulling off a novelty. Right? You've never seen it before because he's playing the second-rate opening. Right? So, to the opposite, right? I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. He's making all these, not such a great moves. Not how could I just play like my normal, Night Orc, right, or something like that? Because it's not Night Orc. This is I don't even know if this has a name or not. I'm sure it does. The queen takes b4. Sicilian. Okay, I guess it's still considered like the more, I don't know. But nevertheless, right? I think, well, just by nature, right? Okay, he develops his queen early. So what do I like to do? I like to develop pieces and try to take advantage. Right? And of course, at e5, what does black do?
Knight d5.
Well, knight d5, queen e4, and this is actually not so clear, right? Because white's pawn on e5 is pretty strong. But e5 is actually a little bit of a blunder.
Oh, can you play queen a5 check?
Yeah, actually that works too. That works too. Yeah, I was actually thinking of knight g4. But both of them are strong. So, anyway, so yeah, I think knight f6 would be a little bit stronger. Okay, so d6, h3, kind of another waste of a move. g6, bishop d3, bishop g7. Right, all here. So when knight e5.
No, actually.
Fair enough. So, right, one thing that you always want to consider actually is you want to think about transformational moves, right? And something like a trade is very much so a transformational move, right? Because you're never going to take it back. So what's the idea? The idea is, well, one, right now you have a safer king, and you have this open C file. So I don't think you necessarily want to trade, right? The first move, it's funny, I actually made a mouse flip. I didn't mean to make the move. But D5 actually is a very good move to consider, right? Because his king is castled. I mean, your king is castled and his king is not yet. Right? So it makes sense to open up the center. Right, so yeah, now I think he... Oh, and you're also threatening d4, so he probably has to take. And queen e2. Okay, now you just freely develop your bishop, and I think you're just much better here, right, if not winning. So, back to here. Okay, he played knight g5, but yeah, I think if he takes, and like castles, queenside, white should be doing relatively well. Because now you also have these double pawns. So knight g5, bishop d7, castles, c8, h4. I think that was not a very good move. h6. Okay, so h6. Not so sure about it, because now the knight goes back, and this pawn actually is a little bit of a target now. Right? And actually, white's pieces right now are not very well placed. right? He would actually, of course, want this bishop to be on e3 and this queen on e3. Right, so very common idea in the dragon is to play actually knight c6, knight e5, but then knight c4. Right, so now, if queen e2, okay, you just take and take, and now if there's something like knight g4, well, this bishop is just incredibly powerful. And otherwise, right, it pretty much has to, after knight c4, play bishop takes c4, rook takes c4, and now, okay, your rook is in the game. You have ideas like b5, b4, and basically you just have a really good position. H6 should be 2. Yeah, he thought he would have a lot of compensation, but he kind of just doesn't. Because all the squares are defended. But here you played knight h5. You want to play knight g4.
Oh yeah.
Wait. Knight g4 runs into queen h3. Excuse me.
Right.
Well, anyway, yeah, knight f6, queen h2, right? Kind of complicated. So yeah, actually probably 98. Right? It looks a little weird, right? Because king is so exposed. But that bishop on d7 is controlling the critical h3 square. Now, this, by the way, is the type of position that I'll actually turn on an engine on. Right? Normally, I actually rarely do that during lessons. But it's a time like this where it's incredibly complicated and I need to keep myself honest. Right? Okay, so take, for instance, I'm wrong. You know, I get 4, knight g4, and okay, queen h3, this is just totally winning for white. So there's my instinct for not correct. So take, okay, so knight h5 with, see, I would have made the losing move. Bishop takes h5, takes, we need 2, bishop g4, f3, c6, g4, h. Okay, so I mean, interesting. Yeah, yeah, actually, it looks pretty good actually, because you get 2 pieces and a pawn for the piece. Oh, wait a minute. You play rook e8, and he played rook g1, but bishop takes a5 would have been a pretty good move.
I did hang my queen somewhere here.
Uh,
The actual game.
yeah, well, maybe he didn't realize knight d5 was a discovery. He played here, and then he went here. He didn't take the queen.
I think.
Okay, so knight d5, rook e8, and okay, right? You know, obviously it was losing. I mean, you were losing, we didn't see it. But, you know, of course, queen takes a2, and oh, wait a minute, this is tricky. Check. You have this idea. Takes. Would be checkmate, but of course he thumps in the bishop. Check. King g7. Wow. Maybe it's a draw after all of this. Look at that. Wow, crazy. Yeah, Peter says like almost equal. He takes, yeah, it went down to equal. Huh. Draw. A lot of those are like, you know, computer type lines where it's complicated, 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 and, you know, it all just becomes a draw. Wow. Interesting. Um, so, okay, so to back it up, you know, back here, sorry, not all the way back there, 95. So yeah, like he plays like 19.5, right? This is the type of moment where, of course, you need to spend, you know, a lot of time at the board, and you know, it's a very complicated position, of course, but um, you know, in this position, yeah, he's threatening the queen, right? So okay, you have a couple candidate moves, you know, queen a4, queen d8. I mean, queen takes a2 is certainly a move that I'm considering for the most, but I mean, okay, very hard to calculate that line, but it's like a forced draw, basically. um, but yeah, actually, it's saying at the 95, queen takes a2 is the best move, and it's just equality. But okay, he did not take the queen, and now you were winning. C3, f3. Yep, rook is trapped. And checkmate. All right. Thoughts, questions, comments, anyone? Okay. So what I thought I would talk about now is I would like to talk a little bit about a very tricky opening that I used to play as black, which is the Aliakin, e4 knight f6. So as you could probably imagine, who feels like they have experience playing against the Aliakin, knight f e4 knight f6? Anyone? Wow. So it's definitely a tricky opening. You'll see every now and then. You know, as you're playing. Who plays e4? Move one. No one plays e4 here? Wow. Either no one plays e4 or it's just a quiet crowd. Okay. But anyway, I think there's, even if you don't play e4, I think there's, you know, a lot of things that you could learn from the Aliakin. So, what's sort of like the obvious move here for white?
Pushing the pawn.
Yep, e5, hit the knight. By far the most theoretical move. There are some other options. You know, I've had certainly players play knight c3, but mostly the people who have, for instance, played knight c3 are, you know, class players that are not looking to, you know, get into very theoretical lines. And you know, when that did happen, you know, okay, I basically was doing, you know, more or less okay. But yeah, the most provocative move is to play e5, attacking the knight on f6. Okay, so where should the black knight go to? Let me get rid of the book chart.
D5.
Right? Exactly, knight d5. Joel Benjamin, Grandmaster, used to play the Brooklyn variation of the Aliakin, knight g8, and had some success with it, I think, back in like the 80s. But
So he's winning the next game with his pieces back.
exactly, And then he's gonna play knight c6 and knight b8. Okay, crazy. And of course, like the other moves are just like no good, right? Knight g4, knight h5, it's bad. And knight e4, it's really like cheeky. Okay, not so great. So yes, knight d5 is the only move, only real good move for black. Okay, so white usually plays d4. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic in this type of situation because white, of course, has an advantage in the center. Black has technically a small advantage in development because he has a knight out in the center. What does black have in return for all of this? Like, why is this even like, reasonable to consider? Not very obvious.
Well, because those pawns are kind of away from the pieces, and potentially maybe they can become a weakness.
That's the idea. So, my coach, Grandmaster Landon Dawson, who, by the way, we're in the baby stages of writing a book together. The Alekhine is going to be one of the chapters. As Dawson used to tell it when he first taught me the Alekhine, it's like crouching tiger, hidden dragon. You're just kind of waiting, giving him a little bit of the center, but at the same time, right, as he expands in the center, well, it's also a little bit of a double-edged sword, right? He might be actually creating some weaknesses as well. So, okay, white in this position usually, black's turn. So black, of course, has to chip away at the center, right, g6. And now white has two main moves here in this position. C4 is what we'll talk about for most of the session, so I'm going to skip over it just for a second. But another idea is for white to play knight f3. This is called the modern against the Alekhine. And black has a number of ideas. Knight c6, bishop g4, g6. But I used to play d takes e5. Knight takes e5. And that's kind of a tricky question. If knight d7, what do you think white would do? And by the way, knight d7 is a theoretical line, but a very, very risky one.
So the problem with taking is that you're helping black develop it, right? Because then black
Exactly.
comes back with, I guess, the queen, and then fianchetto's the white bishop, and so you're helping black develop. But then if you don't take and black probably takes, then you have a funny pawn on e5, then you need to support with something like f4, and then your king side looks funny.
Exactly. Exactly. So here it's definitely, okay, interesting. And I'm just going to say it because otherwise we might be here for the remainder of class and more. So white actually has this very interesting knight takes f7. And it's extremely double-edged. Basically, the computer says that if black does everything correctly, he gets an equal game.
But that's like a fried liver a bit, right?
Yeah, basically.
It's fried liverish.
Right, and honestly, I don't even remember the theory here because I never really learned it that much. Looks like clipboard editor, run mistake. Yeah, okay, like queen h5 check. Computer's actually now saying white's better, but anyway, it's a whole mess. You can do your homework. So, short of the matter is, no, I did not play the knight d7 line. I played g6, which is called the Kangas variation against the Alekhine. And after bishop c4, well, bishop g7, of course, runs into what? Philippe, you just mentioned the fried liver.
Well, you want to do that again?
That's the big. That was my hint. Yes. Right, knight takes f7, king takes f7. We'd have 3 check, and this is actually just game over, basically. Right, because king e6 is even worse than the fried liver, because white has this queen e4 check idea. Right away. So that's why this position, okay, black has this important move, c6, and after castles, bishop g7. Okay, basically, without getting into theory, I could talk about this actually for a while. Black is, basically doing okay. So, why did I give up the Alicante? I'll show you. All right, so c4, knight b6. White again has 2 big possibilities here. One of them is what a lot of players play, because it's very, very, very sharp. But if black knows what he's doing, he's kind of okay. And that's the 4 pawns attack. Like, kind of like there's like 4 pawns attack ideas in many openings. Like Alicante,
King's Indian.
King's Indian, Perk, Modern, and some others as well. Black has a number of possibilities here, but the line that I used to play the most was takes. Right, at first glance, it looks, pretty tricky, and it is. But basically, I played this line, bishop g7, knight c3, and this interesting idea. Castle first, knight f3, and c5. And now, the amount of people that played this losing move against me, d5, including relatively strong players, was like overwhelming. Black plays like bishop g4 and knight b7, and basically this pawn is going to hang, and black is doing incredibly well. But the only other idea is to take, and I've actually had this position in tournament chess many, many, many times. And basically this wild endgame, middle game position is double-edged, but okay for black. Right, the question is, right, relatively, which is worse? My horrible e-pawns or its horrible c-pawns? I also have this strong bishop. Now I open file. He also has a little bit of development things that, I need to worry about. And right, things are crazy. Questions, thoughts, comments? Okay, so let's go back to this position. c4, knight b6. Okay, e takes d6, the exchange variation. So black, of course, has, 2 main moves and 1 sideline. Right, queen takes d6. Right, doesn't lose on the spot because of, c5 running into queen e6 check, but okay, white displays, you can play this anyway, and white is actually just, basically better. It's leading development. So the only real moves are to take and take. So for the most part, I took with the c-pawn. E-pawn is definitely playable. And now, white has this idea of playing knight c3 and after black plays bishop e7, sort of the natural move here, oops. E takes d6, e takes d6, knight c3, bishop e7. What's like the natural move here for white? Like what should white do?
Knight f3.
So it makes sense, right? You often want to develop your knights before your bishops. But here, you actually don't. Because now black actually could very, very freely develop his pieces. And if you remember what I said when I first sort of introduced the Alekhine, is crouching tiger, hidden dragon, right? You gave white the center to later attack it, right? So now you might play like bishop g4, in the knight to the queen, black.
Well, you just block that. I mean,
You can.
with a bishop, right? Does that
Right.
run into trouble?
Okay, so let's make a couple moves. Knight c6, where are you going to go now?
Now I'm gonna do b3
Right, b3, castles.
castles.
Bishop f6.
Bishop e3.
And now you better be ready for the crazy Alekhine knight maneuver. d5. That looks pretty bad. c5.
c5. Yeah.
Knight c8.
Queen d2.
Right, looks all good. Knight
So
e7.
now looks sort of okay. Now that sneaky knight wants to come back.
Like I said, that weird Alekhine knight maneuver.
H3.
Right, so here's the thing, right? Center is relatively closed, right? So h3 takes, right? Obviously, right? You can't play knight f5 immediately, right? But okay, queen d7, rook a8, right? And then knight f5, and guess what? White doesn't have a clear plan. Black does. So it's weird, right? If you gave up the center, and all of a sudden things are not so clear. Right? Because he actually gets counterplay specifically because he had a better center. Right? It's you know, yes, of course, very, very strange. But, you know,
What is black's plan again?
so black's plan, right, is for one, play queen d7, rook a8, right, to free this knight, and then play knight f5 and just put pressure on d4. Right, and this position is semi-closed, which means that the knights are actually better. So anyway, let's back up to this position. Not this position. I'll just go here. It'll take longer to try to find it. So e takes d6, knight c3, g6. The main idea here actually is to play bishop d3 and knight e2. Bishop e7, knight e2, castles, right? And the idea is you're actually sort of constructing against this bishop, right? So like now, if castles bishop g4, you actually have this f3 resource. Well, we play like bishop e3, queen d2, and white is actually doing fairly well. So let's go back to the remaining time and talk about the line that I did actually use to play the outcome, which is the C takes line against the exchange. So now, it's similar in many, many ways, but of course very different, right? Because you check with the C pawn, the C file is open, and they're different. So, what's the normal move for white? What should white do here?
C3 looks natural.
Right? Knight C3. Right? Best move. Okay. So, black usually plays G6. Okay, what should white do now?
Well, based on what you said before, you could probably still put your bishop on d3 and then develop the knight on e2. Because the position is not that different, right?
Yeah, but it is different. Right, so here, right, there actually is a very big difference, right, in the fact that C file is open, right, and after bishop d3, black plays knight c6, and, right, if you try to this same idea, knight e2, and black actually has this very interesting resource of, okay, just bishop g7 threatening the pawn, right? And at bishop e3, black now plays bishop g4, and after f3, you have this interesting idea of bishop f5. And the whole idea is if bishop takes f5, what does black do? Right, so the obvious move is capture back the bishop, but what else could you do?
Knight takes
I was
c4.
thinking knight takes c4. Yeah,
Exactly. I take c4.
that's pretty painful.
Right, by the way, I've had this, many times as black. Over the years. For, in similar positions too. So, back to this position. Well, the main move here that most players do, which is like not good, is knight f3, right? And basically, there's actually a very famous game that Fischer won as black in this line, and basically, I'm just gonna. Normally, I'd spend more time kind of going over it in detail, but we're entered the end of time too. Well, guess what? You have that same Alekhine knight maneuver. Knight c8, h3, bishop takes, takes, and you have this same idea. Now you play actually rook e8, so bishop h6, the bishop comes back, and basically black has this counterplay, attacking the d pawn. And then, I've actually had this position, believe it or not, many times as black. Knight e2, right, is basically forced to threaten. And now what does black do? How does black get a big advantage?
Queen, queen h4 could be maybe a little bit nasty, but maybe not. I'm not sure.
Nasty for you when you trapped your queen with bishop g5. Sorry, I had to.
There you go.
Knight h4. Alright, where's the bishop going? Alright, doubles your pawns and okay. Positionally white's losing. So let's quickly talk about what white should actually do against the exchange variation of the Alekhine. And that is the Varanza attack. Bishop e3. You're delaying the development of your knight on g1, so the bishop is constructed on c8. Bishop g7, rook c1. Castles, b3. Weird. Right? I'll never forget the first time someone played this against me and I didn't even know about it. And I just was like, this is ridiculous. You know, he's like moving his rook and b3, like all of this. So black has a number of moves here, and basically white has an advantage against every single one of them, which is why I gave up the Alekhine. I remember I played one game in 2007, Foxwoods, in this big tournament against this guy. And this was actually, I think, the first person who played it against me. Blaskovic, a strong international master. And basically, I just got into a much worse position. You know, knight e5. And now white makes this interesting move, bishop e2. Right? The idea is he wants to play f4, but not allow some counterplay with knight g4. And it's like bishop e2. And basically white is just better here. You know, he gets his typical center advantage against the Alekhine, but I don't really have a lot of potential to attack his pawns, right? Because they're just in such this nice big pawn chain, right? And the other thing to do, okay, is the main move, e5. Then basically white just gets into this slightly better endgame. Takes, c5. Now, the natural move would be knight d5. But what's the big issue with it? It actually loses almost on the spot.
Bishop e5.
Bishop g5.
And then I was thinking bishop.
Well, maybe just like knight f6. Like maybe it's okay. Or actually, bishop g5, bishop f6. I think if bishop takes, and knight takes d5, bishop takes g5, hitting the rook. Right, but anyway, this is where basically the idea is rook d1, and pinning the knight, and bishop e6, bishop c4 wins. So that's why in this position, yeah, black is forced to come back, knight d7, and like bishop c4, knight c6, knight f3. Okay, this is all theory. Knight a5, bishop e2, and b6. But basically white is just a little bit better here. I remember one game in particular in the Marshall Chess Club Championship in 2008. I was playing against Grandmaster John Fedorowicz. And like in this position, I went out of theory. You know, I only really knew this move. and Fedorowicz played knight a4 against me. And I did actually eventually equalize. Um, I mean, I don't remember all the game after this, but it was a little bit of a mess. Yeah. Short of the matter, the Alekhine, I guess, is like whether or not you'll ever play it or play against it. Right? It teaches you like the idea of imbalanced chess. Right? You expand the center a little bit too much, then it's actually a fine line. Between being very very strong and sort of falling apart. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. So yeah, as you know, we have like 2 weeks left of this cycle. After today, and yeah, we started our group classes again, of course, in January. So yeah, definitely hope to have all of you there then. By the way, we did actually add an extra group adult class as well, like a rookie class actually. Um, so like our beginner class this time will definitely be also a little bit more advanced actually than kind of what it was this time around. Um, that said, I did sort of take the advanced beginners, and Danilo sort of took the less experienced adult and the beginners. So, any questions, thoughts, anyone? All right. Well, thank you all. Have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.
Oh, Peter. Is it Christmas yet?
Hey, bayonet in the face, Evan. Nice background.
Alright, so we're gonna warm up with this puzzle, guys. Welcome everybody. Let's go. We have Santa in the room. Okay, great. It's okay, you can wear it, it's cool, no complaints. Alright, welcome everyone. Alright, warm up. White's playing win. Let's go. What do you got?
Rook takes bishop, rook takes e7.
Rook takes e7. What's happening after rook takes a3 check?
Bishop takes a3. There's no bishop attacking a7 anymore.
Right. Rook takes e7. You're right about that, actually.
There's like a hitting piece basically, bayonet in the face, Evan. Just make sure.
Okay. For one, could you not say that? Thank you. Today is the 70th. Wow, Sam is coming with the facts. It is the 79th anniversary of the Pearl Harbor attack. Did not know that. Okay. Is there a problem with rook takes e7? I feel like. Oh, maybe rook takes c1, rook takes c1, rook takes a3 check, king b3. Rook b3 check. I think there's a perpetual.
No, there's not really a perpetual. After rook takes e7, if that's the best.
Interesting. Right, and now, okay, probably trade rooks. Right. Okay, great. So we're gonna move on. And we are going to talk about some interesting ideas. So what I wanted to actually start on was it's in a different study here. It was a game that, I was looking at, from the tournament that I played recently, in the National Open, and, okay, right game that I was looking for. Yes, it is. No, that was not the. That's a 200 game, 200 move game. That is not the one I was looking for. This is it. Okay, great. So yeah, this is a game that I was playing in the National Open. Yeah, like 2 weeks ago. Okay, so a couple of reasons why I wanted to talk about it, and I'll kind of show you, as we go. Okay, so e4, c5, knight f3, g6, d4, c takes, knight takes, d4. So one reason that I wanted to somewhat talk about this was the idea that I basically used to struggle against the Accelerated Dragon. One organization in New York, Chess in the Schools, they teach in 50 different public schools in New York. For many, many, many years, they've been teaching the Accelerated Dragon, primarily because it's a relatively simple opening, for black to play, as a system. So, okay, so knight c6.
I thought queen takes e4 earlier. That avoids the theory altogether.
So it does, but it's also considered not necessarily the best. Knight f6, e5, knight c6, and white has two possibilities here: queen f4 and queen h4. And you know, for instance, this, and you know, basically black is okay. You know, white needs to know like everything to get an equal position. Um, so yeah, avoiding the theory is not necessarily okay, like a good thing per se. So anyway, knight takes d4, c4. Right. So this is what I've been playing for many years. Does anyone know what this is?
My Krosky bind.
World Chiba. Good. So knight f6. Of course, very common idea in the Sicilian. You know, in some cases you might think, oh, you could, you know, do this and play e5. But of course, if you do that, he's reconnecting for a second. B takes e5, e5. You know, runs into my queen a5 check, double attack, and you know, winning ideas. So I can't do that. You gotta first, before you play e5, play knight c3. Okay, so knight c3. D6. Bishop e2. Knight takes d4. Queen takes d4. Bishop g5. Castles. Queen d2. Common idea, of course. I need to be on the lookout for, you know, potential discoveries. Right? He has things like knight d7, activating his bishop. Right? You need to be a little bit preemptive. Queen d2. And a5. So it castled a4, right? So this whole idea for him is a little bit double-edged. He, you know, so I was actually doing a lesson in the previous class about the Alekhine, and I was teaching how it's a little bit double-edged. You know, in the Alekhine, you put a bunch of pawns in front of your opponent's pieces, right, and get this, you know, very big center. But at the same time, wait, is this? No. I thought there was someone in the waiting room for a second.
Well, about the Alekhine, you're saying that was the Alekhine you could do something to your opponent's pawn or what?
You put a bunch of white puts a bunch of pawns, you know, in the center, but at the same time, you know, they could be potential weaknesses as well, right? It's a little bit double-edged. Okay, great. Moving on. So, right, same idea with this a pawn, right? Okay, so rook ad1. That was my first, like, not so good move in this game. So, what should white do here? Don't listen to me. That's number one. Okay.
Bishop h6, you know, to trade off the bishop, to trade off like black's best bishop.
So, possible, but, you know, okay, maybe now black plays things like, you know, queen b6, put some pressure here. You know, my bishop also has potential. I don't want to be in such a rush there. So, look, I was correct in the sense that I should be developing my rooks now. Right, my queen and bishops are out. My, you know, knights are out. So, right, in general, I absolutely was correct, actually, that I should be, you know, starting to, you know, develop my rooks. But the question is, how should I develop my rooks?
Yeah, instead of moving your A rook, you could have moved your, F rook to D1.
Okay, well, let's allow someone else to give it a chance.
What about rook, rook from A to C1?
Rook A to C1. So, yeah, that definitely would have been a possibility. Um, but okay, I mean, he plays actually this very interesting idea of A3. The computer Alpha Zero actually is very famous for moves like A3 and H3. Um, and basically, the idea is, after like B3, basically black just has all this play on the dark square. Right, so if you remember from last week, we were talking about the idea of Dasha, right? Playing on dark and playing on light, and okay, trying to get perfect harmony. So, right, the idea here is, right, honestly, I put Rook 81 a little bit too quickly. The most theoretical move here actually is to play Rook AB1, right? And your idea is you could play for B3 or B4, right? And then your F Rook actually has a lot of options, right? To D1, to E1, C1, right? So a lot of what you want to, constantly make sure you're doing is increasing your, potential opportunities. So, okay, I played Rook 81, Queen A5, Knight D5, common idea, Knight takes D5, takes, and here I was in a little bit of a rush to make the most theoretical move. Knight D5 is very much a common idea in the Maroczy Vine and Accelerated Dragon, and, a lot of related lines. And I kind of just did that, sort of naturally. But actually, I should have prepared myself. And that's one thing that, a lot of students, myself, make mistakes with is, just kind of rushing to, the thematic idea. Right? But of course, no, I should play F3, bishop B6, even retreat the bishop, control some of these critical squares. And at the right moment, I play my Knight D5 idea. All right, and the whole idea, by the way, of this Knight D5 idea, right, let's say in a line like this, right, in a line like, let's say bishop E3, yeah, rook F8, right, the whole idea.
Don't they call it the dragon trick because you take on E7 with check? Is that
Sometimes, but you got to be careful, right? Like for instance, here,
no,
Knight takes E7 is losing to King F8.
Yeah.
Right, you got to be careful, right? Don't play any of these lines by saying, "Oh, it's just a line that I know." Right? If you do that, then you make tons of mistakes.
I play similar positions with black, and people make mistakes like that all the time. Around like the 1500 level. So.
Right? Exactly. Right? Why? Because the only reason is, right, with all these theoretical ideas, you need to think out the board. Okay, so I played Knight D5, takes. Oh, no, not this. Back here, takes. Right, again, a little bit premature. And by the way, as you can see, I'm 199 right now. Playing this 1929. So someone who's a little bit stronger, weaker than me, but not, by far. So like takes. Yes, thank you. Okay, so queen takes, rook takes. Here, I was pretty happy. You know, I thought I was doing very well, and I was very, very, very satisfied, with my position. He's got this backward E pawn, which is the whole idea of the knight d5 line against the Mark 9. But yes, Peter.
It's black to move, right?
Yes.
Well, doesn't he have a3?
Yes, he does, and I could have resigned.
I was thinking about that too.
Because now,
Well, that's what he did, and I lost this game very, very badly. So good choice. Yes, right. Because honestly, I went with the momentum. I was moving a little bit quickly too. Just whatever. Right? Yeah. Ouch. Such a surprise. Yeah.
Wait, did you win or did you lose?
We'll get there.
I
Get
must
there.
have.
So actually, yeah, right. So in this position, right? Honestly, I was playing as Dawson would tell me to lightheaded. I was like, yeah, okay, everything's good. So yeah, I mean, if I play queen takes a5, rook takes a5, I mean, this actually would not be like a very successful like position, but okay, I would have been like equal. Or I could actually play b4 too.
Yeah, I was gonna say, could you have played b4 there? Yeah.
Right.
And the queen was. No,
But
when the
actually,
queen was-
it is slightly better for him.
What about when the queens were when the queen was on the board? Could you have played b4 then? Earlier?
You're fine.
Prior?
In this position b4.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah, so I could. He would take on Passant. I would take on Passant back. I mean, back on Passant, but I would take back. And yeah, I mean, this is not a pleasant position for me, particularly. But yes, I mean, it would certainly be better than the game. Right? Like, he might play this thematic idea of, like, b5, right? So, like, takes and pawn structure is just ruined, right? Like, with b8, and just kind of double up, and, okay, he's doing pretty well. So yeah, that's why, right? Like, rather than b4 here, yeah, I mean, queen takes a5 would have been, like, okay, I think the computer says like black is, slightly better, basically. Yeah, very slightly better. Rook takes a5, or actually, yeah, rook d2 in this position. But yeah, I mean, of course, I played rook e1, queen takes d2, and I was just, I mean, and I didn't even consider a3. Honestly, it's a relatively basic move, to see. Literally, it didn't even cross my mind. And then, yeah, of course, here I was just, I mean, I played a bunch of more moves, trying to just like dream of some counterplay, but, he was up the exchange and won.
Red.
So, why did I show this game? Well, a couple of reasons. Right, one, I think modesty is very important. It's something that a lot of chess teachers won't do. Certainly, it's not something I enjoy doing. And like, oh, I lost this game like this, so it's great. I lost to someone who was much less weaker. But the truth is, I think there's a lot of instructive moments here. One, just talking the whole idea of the Maroczy mind, right, where you are trying to prevent counterplay before you move forward. I need to learn about modesty. My ego is the size of pigs. True.
Yeah, Roulette Evan, I can't believe you made a bad move throughout the game, but seriously, you didn't see the fact that he could simply play A3, because earlier I wish you played B3 earlier in the opening, because that probably would have stopped his A3 idea, or took in the, instead of taking his rook takes D2, do bishop takes D2. What would happen if you done bishop takes D2 Russian Roulette Evan?
Okay, please stop saying that. If bishop takes d2, in that line, good question. Yeah, okay, bishop takes d2, yeah, actually is relatively better. But yeah, I mean, of course, just, losing for me. When he wins a pawn, okay, this is, bad at this point. Right, so anyway, a couple ideas, right? Isolate. One, right, Roxy Mine, stop counterplay. Interesting idea, right? Karpovian. And second thing, I mean, honestly, you need to be careful, right? One bad day, the rest of the game. Etc. Right, one bad move, cost the game essentially. Okay, does anyone want to volunteer and look at one of their recent games?
Evan, actually, in a serious question, why do you hate me?
I do not hate you.
I can't
Alright.
keep trying to joke with you, but you get upset
Okay,
at me.
okay. Let's not talk about that now. Who wants to go over their game? Someone? No one? No one has any games that they played last week? Okay. Game analysis is good, guys. Peter said he doesn't have anything good that he hasn't shown me already. Okay. So, we will not do game analysis. I thought someone would actually have a decent game. Coach. Okay, cool. Awesome. So, let's do something else. Okay. We will talk a little bit about the Caro-Kann. Everyone's favorite opening. Alright. So the Caro-Kann has been my main opening for many, many years. And let's start out with the very, very, very basic. Caro-Kann looks like a strange move. But Caro-Kann called the director. Alright. What's the idea of the Caro-Kann? It looks like a strange move. It doesn't control the center. It doesn't develop pieces. What's the idea? Peter?
Well, so the idea is to be able to play d5 like in the French, except keep the options open for developing your bishop without locking it in with the move e6.
Good. Right. Also, right, you want to play d5, right, but not like the Scandinavian, right, with the queen in the center. You want to capture back with the pawn. Okay, so if your opponent does not do anything but e5, c5, or knight f6, of course, white wants to control the center, d5. Okay, so d5. I'm going to take everyone on a little tour of the Caro-Kann. So, first, we're going to start out with the advanced variation. So black has two main options here. The main option is to play bishop f5. But I'm not going to talk about that, because I don't know it. c5 is the sideline, which is pretty good. What should white play here?
C3.
So, if C3,
C3 as in-
knight C6, who's doing well here? White or black?
Black.
Someone else. Someone else. Who's doing well here?
I think black's substantially better because
I don't know about
basically-
substantially better. That's an exaggeration, right? Peter needs to work on that, and we all do. Right? Very no, but I mean in all sincerity, right? That's when blunders happen, when you like your position a little bit too much, or not enough. That's what a lot of blunders happen. Right? But yes, black is doing fairly well.
because
Who could explain, other than Peter, who could explain to me why black is doing fairly well here?
He has a developed knight and 2 pawns in the center, and white has just pushed 3 pawns.
What opening is this like, Tim? But very different at the same time.
It's sort of like reverse Queen's Gambit, a little
Queen's Gambit.
bit. Queen's Gambit.
a really-
fine.
It's a
Well,
king pawn opening. It's a king pawn opening.
Yeah, yeah.
Is it like an improved version of the French?
Good man. Right? It's like the advanced variation of the French, but the bishop is not behind the pawn chain. So basically, and by the way, I've had many 2400s lose to me in this line as white. My good friend Adam Maltese, Fide Master, right? Got into a lot of trouble in this line against me. Yeah, basically bishop g4, bishop d3, or no, not bishop d3, bishop e2, e6, and basically black is just doing okay, very well. So, back it up. Only real move for white here to try to get an advantage is the take. Okay. What does black do now? Mr. Wheel.
Knight c6.
So knight c6 is a possibility that is favored by the great Vladimir Polyakin. And that is the old line, knight c6. But there's sad news. After knight f3, e6, bishop b5, basically you're not going to win your pawn back that easily. As Peter says, you cry because you're down a pawn. Wah, wah, wah. Okay. So,
You could win the pawn back with, bishop takes e5 because bishop b5 is no longer a check.
in what position? How are you going to win back the pawn?
Bishop takes c5.
Oh, you know what? You're correct. See, everyone, I was going too quickly and everyone was like, yeah, trusting me. No, don't trust me. Bishop e3. Right, and then like knight c3, bishop e5. Basically, you're not winning back the pawn so easily. So no, the idea is you want to play e6. Right, which is a little bit, in a way, contradictory to what I was talking about before. I did say before that your main advantage of this over the French is that, okay, your bishop is outside the pawn chain, now it's not. But, okay, this is a little bit different. This pawn is already outside of the center. Right? And if you can win back the pawn back by force, okay, it's going to be worth it. So, what's white's most pressing move to try to get an advantage or give black problems? Sam.
Bishop e3.
Bishop e3. All right, what should black do now? Someone new.
Knight c6.
Knight c6. So knight c6 is possibility, but similar to the other line,
Uh-huh.
you're not gonna. I think it actually just transposes, probably.
Okay, right.
Yeah. Peter.
What about queen to
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
the queen to a5 check or
So queen a5 check runs actually into c3. Because bishop takes c5, b4.
What about bishop takes c5? Because if bishop takes pawn, then if bishop takes, then queen e5 check.
And then b4.
Oh, I see that.
You gotta be careful, right? These moves, right? Very, very tricky.
yeah?
Very, very tricky. Gotta be careful.
You can't really see the H file.
Uh,
Like your screen is like
Is that better?
3/4. No.
Is that better?
We
No.
still can't see it.
It's cut off.
That's really strange, actually. I don't know how that would.
Wait a minute. Instead of knight c6, why not knight?
Hey, hold on. Is that better, guys?
Yes.
Yeah.
I have no idea why that would be.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway. Look.
Kevin, did you listen? Knight d7 instead.
So knight d7 is a move. That is actually the main move of the position. But I don't particularly love it because it's a little passive. Bishop b5, queen e5, knight c3, you win back the pawn. Wait, no, you don't do that because that just loses.
No.
Right, so yeah, so you don't win back the pawn that easily. So black has another move that I kind of like. Yes, Santa Claus.
Maybe queen c7.
Queen c7. I've never seen that move before, so it's probably not good.
No, it's a novelty. 15.
I don't know. Maybe knight c3, just develop. Give me back the pawn, develop. Knight b5.
Why not take the e pawn?
Yeah, that's what the idea is you're attacking both the e.
Gotta be dangerous. Look how many pieces I got developed. Maybe 5. Yeah, no, this has gotta be good. That's gotta be good. But if you take the C pawn, not so clear. But anyway, nevertheless, the main move, not the main move. The main move is knight g7. But, bam, knight h6. So, looks like a very strange move. Right? Because if bishop takes h6, these pawns become doubled, and they're terrible, but black is much better. Why? Because black has the two b's. He's got this open T file. This pawn is go. And black is much better. b4, black actually has this queen h4 move. And pawn. Okay, black is better. So, white makes this interesting c3 move. Okay. What does black do?
Knight f5.
Bishop d4. What does black do? Peter.
Still silly, but maybe queen h4.
And then knight f3. And then what?
Oh, yeah, no.
Goodbye.
Call the director. No.
I'm at queen e4, bishop d2. Okay, right. Don't bring your queen out too early.
What about knight c6?
Knight c6, knight f3.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Russian.
Anyone? I'll give you a hint. This is a random hint, but it's a hint. The move looks positionally terrible.
Oh, I'm good at that. Okay. I can find bad moves. It's the good moves I have trouble with. All right.
Not like knight a6, right?
Knight h6. Well, then bishop takes
I was actually
h6.
considering
Oh,
that
yeah,
move.
yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Oh wait a minute, hang on. Yeah,
Knight
nine
takes
is-
d4.
Bam!
Really?
Right, and positionally it looks terrible. Why? Because the bishop on d4 is doing absolutely nothing. The knight on f5 looks pretty good. And you're down a pawn, and you don't want to trade. But knight takes d4 is a theoretical.
But Evan, in one of your matches, I saw you play this line a few times. Just saying.
Yeah. Sam's prepared. Okay. So, but also you didn't get the whole theoretical spiel. Okay. So, knight takes d4, takes on d4. What is black playing? This move actually is positional.
Could you play like knight c6 or something?
I could, but one thing you guys have to also remember is I'm down a pawn. Right? When you're down a pawn, you can't just develop. Right? If I make moves like knight c6, okay, he makes moves like knight c3. And yeah, this pawn is, a little bit of a target for him. Right? But I think he's more or less just up a pawn. You can play knight f3, bishop e2, castle, and okay, he's down a pawn.
You can always just grab his H pawn off the board while he goes to the bathroom, but But
Come on, Sam, you've seen this line a couple times. So what's the answer? Ha! He doesn't remember.
maybe F6.
So f6, right? Kind of like a French, But okay, like then it's basically like a French, but I'm down a pawn. No, not so happy. Actually, you might even play like I checked straight to weaknesses. I don't know.
Never play
b6. So now
What?
White has two interesting possibilities. The main move takes. We'll get there. But there's actually a cool funky line that I spent a lot of time analyzing. Which is b4.
Yuri.
a5. Attack the root of the pawn chain. Jack to your Mezbel king, sir. Bishop d7. Queen a4. You ready for it? Bam. Bam.
Yo, what?
And unclear. My good friend, Feuding Master Lee Pressman, and I did a lot of analysis here, and basically came to the conclusion that White's a little bit better with completely best play, but very, very, very complicated. We've done a lot of analysis in this line after I beat him like 3 times in a row in tournament chess, and this line is black. And black has the 2 bishops. A lot of positional compensation for the
Black is
exchange.
actually down, or am I just going blind?
Black is down in material, yes.
Okay.
But black has a lot of compensation. Right? It's got the 2 bishops. White can't castle so easily. pawn on d4 is still a target. Very, very, very complicated.
Can't black just play bishop to c6? What's white gonna do with his queen?
Hey,
So yeah, so white has to play. Um.
it's trapped, isn't it?
But it's white's turn.
Oh,
But takes. Well, it's been a little while since I played this line. Knight d2, bishop c6.
What about knight c3?
Knight c3, black just takes.
And then rook b1.
Yo, rip. Rip.
Maybe a4 initially.
Problems.
He just ignores a4, just puts bishop on.
Yeah, but if he ignores a4, I play a5.
What?
yeah.
I'm like really confused now, to be honest.
A4 and taking on Passant, you know. Oh, well, he just takes on Passant. Yeah, that's probably the reputation.
I mean, this is. Oh yeah. Oh, you know what? You're right. Actually, you're totally right. Yeah. So bishop takes b5. Well, that's right. I did miss a critical move. That's right. Queen b7. Right. And yeah, this becomes like incredibly complicated. Takes, and then bishop b5. Computer saying it's like 20, so a little bit hospital. But
What do you say about computer? Like, why does computer say white is winning, but you're saying that it's playable?
it's very unclear. It's very, very unclear. But okay. Anyway, I don't want to spend the whole line talking about this. Right? Because in addition, by the way, right, in this position, after bishop b5 check, bishop d7, queen a4, you don't have to sack the exchange. Right? There's also this line, which is like not so bad for you. Queen d7 takes, and his pieces do actually crumble. Oh, actually, wow, this is another crazy, crazy line. Here. Wait, no, it's something like this where you sack the rook. Oh, that's in a different line. That's right. Yeah, like b6, b4, a5. Here. Anyway, I'm forgetting exactly all this here. There's a line where you sack the rook, and it's incredibly complicated. But basically, black is okay. So in this position, the main move is to take, and basically, without getting into all the details, then basically black has a lot of compensation, right, on the dark squares. Okay. So, see, that's my nutshell of the advanced variation C5. All right, moving on. C6, D4, D5. Let's talk about the exchange variation. So, without getting into any theory, I don't think it makes positional sense to play the exchange variation. Why? We'll talk about the payoff afterwards, which does start with this. But why doesn't it make sense to play the exchange variation just based on basic opening theory? Not knowing a single thing, even not knowing what the Caro-Kann is, why doesn't E takes D5, C takes D5 what
although
does it
you're
make?
giving up the center, and you're giving up, in a sense, your advantage because.
Thank you. That's it. All right, giving up the center, exchanging a center pawn for a non-center pawn. By itself doesn't make positional sense. Okay, so bishop d3, knight c6, c3, knight f6. So White has this idea to basically to delay the development of his knights. Bishop g4. What does White usually do here? Sam's sister maybe has an
Knight to E2.
possible, right? But maybe a little passive. How do you cause a little bit of pressure?
F3 maybe.
Queen to A4.
So, well, for one, f3, here's the deal, right? Black actually has this common maneuver of playing bishop h5 and bishop g6 to exchange those bishops. So you're kind of just telling him what to do. Right? You're making a weakening move that's telling his bishop to go where it wants it to go.
What about just queen to c2?
Queen c2, possible, creating a battery, right? But Black could actually just play rook c8 even. Right now he's threatening knight takes d4.
I remember how this is after I thought about playing. Play queen b3.
Yes. I put pressure. Queen d7. Knight d2. e6. Knight f3. And what should Black do here?
Bishop D6.
Mm-hmm. But it loses the pawn.
Uh-huh.
Rook b8.
Exactly. Right, and Black is better. Now, what's interesting though is after castles, Black castles anyway. Yeah. So. Okay. So yeah. So castles. Castles. Rook d1. Yes, Peter.
I think I remember what Black's supposed to do here, and just from the pawn structure, I think I might be correct, which is you want to play rook b8 here and start a minority attack.
Good man.
See, I listened all those months ago. I listened. He thought I didn't listen, but I did.
So, good job. Okay. So, right, what's the idea of the minority attack? Well, for one, why does that have the name? Minority attack. Well, you have 2 pawns, you have 3 pawns on the queen side. Okay? Basic idea, White will go for king side attack. And Black will go for this minority attack. Where basically he's going to try to eventually get into a situation where he takes, and White has this backward c pawn for him to attack. Double-edged position, roughly around b. Okay, that is exchange variation. So, as Peter alluded to, there's also the Panel-Botvinnik. d5. Takes. What is the Panel-Botvinnik?
c4.
c4. And Knight f6, knight c3. What would you do if you're black here? Someone new. Herman, what would you do?
What would you do if you are black?
Peter knows me too well. Alright. Tim.
E6.
So that is one of the main theoretical moves. Knight c6 is another. And then there is my favorite, g6, which was played most famously by Grandmaster Gadakonski, top US player. So it's actually a pawn sacrifice line for two reasons. So after c takes d5, in this position, black actually can't really take back on d5, even though that's like the obvious move. Why is that? Because if we could actually use the chat a little bit less about random stuff, that would be ideal. Thank you guys.
Because doesn't White has the check right now with the queen, a4, and then wait a minute.
Well, that's actually not such a big deal, because then black plays actually bishop d7,
Interposes, okay.
right? And we'll be able to maneuver the bishop to c6. Either that, or actually just play sort of like Grunfeld, right? Like knight c6, and yeah, you probably can't take on b7, like rook b8. But the idea here is actually just a simple bishop c4. And like queen f3, and it's actually just pretty bad. Black is actually forced to play like e6, and just all of these dark squares are like very, very, very bad for black. So the idea here is actually after c takes d5, you play bishop g7. Wait a minute. G3, yeah, G6 takes on D5. Yeah, bishop G7. And the main idea here is to actually play like bishop E2. Right, so after castles, bishop E2, not so easy to pick back the pawn. And it becomes, you know, sort of an interesting line. So, lastly, for the last couple minutes that we have here together, we'll talk about classical. So, E4, C6, D4, D5, knight C3. So, D takes E4, knight takes E4. Black has a couple possibilities. Anatoly Karpov actually basically invented, you know, the knight d7 line, such called the Karpov variation. Definitely not bad, but a little bit passive. You know, like
I play this against black, you know, so what I do here is just play knight g5. You know that move that this deep blue played against Kasparov? I played that move.
In other lines, knight g5 is possible. Here, just not yet. E5 actually is a possibility for black. But anyway, I'm not gonna get into the theory there. But okay, knight f6 is also an interesting line. The Nimzovich Larsen attack. Knight takes f6. D takes f6. And this line just used to confuse me a lot at playing the white side. I always knew that I was like better, but at the same time, I actually got into trouble a lot in this line. Because if white just makes the normal developing moves, like knight f3, basically black quickly castles, and actually black is at least equal. Yeah, he's got these double pawns, but he's got quick development with the bishop, and it's not so clear where this bishop on c1 is going. So you actually need to do something a little bit better than just going with the flow and developing your pieces.
I play C3 here.
So c3 is possible, but doesn't necessarily have that much of a purpose. Does anyone have any other ideas for what white should consider doing here?
What about C4?
Well, the thing about c4 is this d pawn could actually become a little bit of a target. Right, like for instance, bishop e4 check right away. And then bishop d2. Queen e7 check, queen e2, right? For instance. Oh, right. Actually, that's a big problem, actually. Right, and I'm thinking about bishop b4 check only because you can't play c3 anymore, of course. Right, and actually, I didn't even think about it. Right, that's actually a pretty big problem. Right, if bishop takes d2 check, you're forced to take with the king. Black could actually play bishop b6 avoid a pair of queens, and of course, black is much better here. So, the idea that I actually studied only relatively recently, maybe a year ago now, is this idea of playing a quick bishop c4. And the idea is, black plays bishop d6. What does white do now?
Knight e2.
Well, knight e2 castles. You're in a funky position, actually. In fact, I honestly once did lose a pretty bad game in this line as black. And, basically, I did actually have something like this, and I just actually got into all sorts of problems. Knight on e2 just not looking that great. So the idea is to actually throw in this check. Oops. Queen e2 check. Alright, and after queen takes, bishop takes. Right, and you play knight e2. And basically, white is not winning, but it's just basically clearly a little bit better. So I'll talk very, very briefly, since we're at a time here, about the main line, the main line of the Caro-Kann, which is this idea. And h5, bishop h7, right? I used to get really confused because I always knew that this was certainly a good idea for white to play this h4, h5, locking the bishop on h7. But I always got a little bit confused. And I figured, wow, Sam Pang knows his history. His main line came up Yes, quite a bit in that we call authentic match. I actually have a book on all the games. I was actually read that book cover to cover, believe it or not. One of the very few books I've read cover to cover. Okay. Right. What's the whole idea of this H4, H5? Why? And by the way, my friend Adam Maltese, who's a FIDE master, once asked this to Dawson in front of me. You know, he's a FIDE master, he has no idea. Other than the fact that it's theoretical and it's been played at the Carl Con for like a long, long time.
Doesn't it give you an advanced king attack by just moving the black's bishop around? And then you can castle queenside and then later push the G pawn?
So there are some lines, yes, that you do. Not particularly common. There are some lines where it happens, but that's actually not the most common use.
I mean, I've had a hard time trying to play this position like a caveman. You know, just go H4, G4, and just rook G1, trying to.
So it's actually, guys, much, much longer term. You're actually looking at the future endgame, and you're fixing this G pawn. All right, if you trade everything off, White's going to have a much better pawn endgame. Right? Kind of crazy. Okay, well, thank you, everyone, for coming, as always. As I'm sure all of you know, we have another 2 weeks left of this session. And then we start in the beginning of the new year with another great session. We're going to have actually 4 levels now, for adults. But pretty much you'd be, probably in the intermediate, again. Stuff is not going to be, same content. It's going to be, rolling and, moving forward. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, let me know. And thank you all.
I have a question.
Yes.
I signed up for the winter break camp. Did you get that?
I don't have it in front of me now, but yeah, I think I did see that.
Okay, thanks.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Does anyone have any questions or things that they would want to learn next week? Any openings, endgames, any of that? All right. Well, think of it throughout the week, and if anyone has any games they play throughout the week that they'd like to go over, I'm certainly on board.
Probably play phone on Monday, so
Thanks, Evan. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Merry Christmas, everyone, and have a great day, Russian roulette.
Merry Christmas. Don't play the
And
card.
then in the face, Evan.
And no, we cannot. I will show you. You know what? I'll give you like the 2 seconds version of Legacy Ground.
2 seconds for what, Evan?
You know what, Sam? I'll even do it now. How about that?
Okay.
G4.
Oh yes.
Peter, what do you do?
D5.
G4, you play E5.
Okay.
No, I mean he showed them how to break my main repertoire, and then you play H5, and then after he takes, which is basically forced to play knight F6, and then you're basically winning.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Oh.
And then I cry because the Grob is broken.
Right, like T4, yeah, rook takes H5, and you just put pressure on here, and you're better.
I mean,
Was that a good, quick answer for you, Sam?
Yes.
but no one knows this reputation, so just play the Grob and like.
Except for me, Robert Hess, who taught it to me.
Chess.
All right, goodbye, friends.
This is an
Yeah.
official.
Goodbye, Russian roulette, Evan. Merry Christmas.
Bye.
All right, thank you everyone for watching. I'm done with those classes. I'm gonna see who I'm gonna raid right now. Spy Kid, yeah, thank you so much for your support as always. Very excited too to have you in our winter break camp, of course, and I'm sure some of our group classes in the fall as well.
Oh, thank you so much, Premier Chess, for the raid.